Welcome to 5% Radio, where it's all about learning like no one else today so you can live like no one else tomorrow. Please be sure to share and subscribe. Hello, what is up, 5%ers, and welcome back to another episode of the 5% Radio podcast. Today is episode number 49, and I want to talk to you about avoiding information constipation. So, what exactly do I mean by that term? Well, we all know people that just ingest tons and tons and tons of content. They're listening to a million podcasts, and they're always reading different articles, and they're watching a ton of videos, and they follow a million people online, and they're always talking to different people, getting into different projects, and they're always learning. And I can make fun of that because that was me for a very, very, very long time. I was learning literally just for the sake of learning. Just for the sake of learning. I was listening to, I think, probably 5 different podcasts. I was doing tons of reading in a ton of different areas, a lot of it just for the sake of reading. And then I was also watching tons of videos. And then at one point I got access to a bunch of different courses, and I was watching a bunch of different courses on all kinds of different stuff in the marketing agency world. And I was reading a ton of different books on marketing stuff. And then I was getting into different mentorship programs, and I was constantly consulting with different people that were in the industry that I was looking to grow. And I was going through all of this different stuff. And then if they had a live Q&A call, or if they had a coaching call, or if they had a sales call, or if there was some new sales methodology, I'd grab the book and I'd read it. And all that is, it's well and good. It's great. But there's a quote by Jim Rohn that I want to start us off with, and he says this. He says, "Don't let your learning lead to knowledge. Let your learning lead to action." So again, I used to do this. I used to be this person that just learned for the sake of learning. And honestly, learning of itself feels good. I love learning. There's nothing that I enjoy more than just learning, studying a new topic. And when I say there's nothing I enjoy more, I mean it's literally one of my absolute favorite things. It's just to deep dive something, go full immersion, listen to things about it, watch videos, read about it, talk to people that do it. I love learning in new areas. I really do. And there's actually a leadership expert, I think he's still around today, and he would take 3 years, and every 3 years he would switch topics of what he studied. And I know that sounds like, there's no way that people do that, but he actually did it because there is a lot of benefit of knowing a little bit about a lot. There actually is. Robert Kiyosaki talks about this in it's either Rich Dad, Poor Dad or the Cash Flow Quadrant. I referenced some of those materials in episodes 4 and 5, but he talks about how there is benefit to knowing a little bit about a lot because you can relate with a vast amount of people versus the guy who's super narrow and only knows a ton about one subject, and he's a little bit maybe dry or boring to some people because that's all he wants to talk about. However, learning in and of itself does feel great. It feels like you're making progress. Notice I use the word feels. It feels as if you're making progress. It's kind of like, I would equate it to like working a ton of overtime. It just makes sense, right? I'm going to make more money. I need to earn more, so therefore I should work more. Well, yeah, but at what cost? By the time the taxes come out and by the time the things get behind at the house and everything else falls off the table and your relationship with your spouse and your kids kind of begins to wane and you're fully exhausted and you're not as productive as you are at work, and you're like, well, I gotta earn more, so I should just work more. Like it's on the surface, it sounds like it should make sense. It should be the answer. I'm just going to put in as much OT as I can, man. I put in 90 hours this week, and you're gaining weight and you feel terrible and you can't sleep right, and like you're sleeping through your alarm, so you're getting pointed out because you said you'd be there for this shift and you didn't show up because you didn't wake up on time. And like, I've known friends that this happened to. They literally were sleeping through their alarms and almost lost their job, or got to the point where, man, if you do one more thing, call off one time, get in a car wreck on the way here, you have to go to the ER, anything, like we're going to have to point you out because it's like you don't have room for any more points, even though their goal was to make as much money as possible. So they're working all these hours because, man, the OT is available. I might as well take it. I'm getting ahead, right? Not always. So learning just for the sake of learning is not always going to really get you ahead. So you have to ask, like, what's the trade-off? So how do you actually avoid information constipation? Because there are those of you that listen to this show, along with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other shows, and then you also follow 30 people on YouTube. You keep up with all their content. You follow half a dozen people on Facebook that are in your field of study, maybe, or just kind of around success in general, and you watch their stuff, and then there's a certain author that anytime he comes out with a book, you also read his stuff, and then there's another, there's a page on Instagram, and there's a blog you follow, and you're mentoring with 5 different people and in 4 different areas, and and then there's that one friend that you always take advice from, and then there's the 4 projects that you have going on right now that none of them are in the same field, and it feels like you're making progress, but really, if you were to take a piece of paper, draw a circle, and then draw basically a spider with 10 legs, So it's not even a spider, but bear with me here for the analogy. So I draw a circle and I draw, 10 little lines out from that circle. I can either make an inch of progress, and this example comes from Sam Ovens in one of his old trainings years ago that I watched. So I can either make an inch of progress in 10 different directions, or I can make 10 inches of progress in one. Meaning I can focus on all these different things, which actually that would be the opposite of focus. I'm distracted by 9 things, and I have one that I should be focusing on. And I've talked about focus before on this show, but honestly, focus is really just the opposite of distraction. So if I'm looking at distraction as a whole, again, going in 10 different directions when I should be going in one, so 9 of those are distractions. Well, what is the opposite of distraction? If a distracted person does X, then a focused person does not choose to do X. So if a distracted person reads all these different things in totally different areas, and they're listening to a million podcasts, and they're following, 20 different YouTube channels, and they're constantly going through different courses, and they're not focused on anything, if that's what a distracted person does, then a focused person does the opposite. And here's what that really looks like. So I was speaking the other day, kind of training a sales team, and one of the things that I was talking about was the idea of general to specific knowledge and your learning. And Napoleon Hill talked about this years ago in his book, Think and Grow Rich, that he wrote in 1937 or something. But he talked about specific knowledge, talked about acquiring specific knowledge, meaning exactly what you need to know for your trade, for your career, for your profession to move forward and actually have a leg up, an edge on the competition. Peter Senge, in his book, The Fifth Discipline, talks about the only sustainable competitive advantage is your organization's ability to outlearn or to learn faster than the competition. So when you begin learning in an area, I don't care what it is. So let's take cycling or bike riding. So I'm riding a bicycle. That is the top of the funnel. So I want you to picture an upside down triangle with the bottom shaved off. It's literally just a funnel. Draw that out. At the top, you see general. And when I start riding a bike, the first time I ride, I'm literally just learning to pedal. So that is general knowledge. So I'm learning, and I want you to imagine that you can listen to podcasts, watch videos, and read books and articles and coach with people and go through courses in this area. So you're a 4-year-old and you have the ability to learn, and you have the desire to go through all these different courses because you're like, man, I want to be, out of all the 4-year-olds on my block, I want to be the best cyclist that there ever was at the age of 48 months old. I want to be the best there ever has been. So you begin going through all these courses. So I could take a course on learning how to pedal and learning how to turn and learning how to, adjust my handlebars and learning how to balance, learning where my head goes and learning how to use my pedal brakes and all this different stuff. Learning when I should sit, learning when I should stand, learning, how do I start with my mom or dad holding on to me, and how do I start leaning against a wall, and how do I safely come to a stop, and how do I not only safely come to a stop and not fall over, but actually come to a stop and then be able to start again on my own. I can learn all of these things. Again, talking about the top of the funnel, general. I can learn all of these general skills, but eventually I'm going to have to get down to specifics. Years down the road, once I've mastered riding a bike, not falling over, I can ride in snow, and I can ride in mud, and I can ride in dry conditions, and I can ride when it's wet outside, and I can ride when it's hot, and I can ride when it's cold, and I can ride in all of these different conditions. And I know how to ride a few kinds of different bikes. I can ride a mountain bike and a road bike and a BMX bike, and I can ride single speed, I can ride gears, I can ride bikes that have shocks and bikes that have no shocks, and I can do all this different stuff. I can ride different tires, and I can ride with the seat high or the seat down, or handlebars like this or handlebars like that. That's general knowledge. Then I want to get down to specific. Okay, now I want to learn how to get into mountain biking. And then even more specific, I want to learn how to get into downhill racing. Again, even more specific, I want to learn how to get into competitive downhill racing in this state. And then more specific than that, I want to learn to get into the top 5% of all riders of competitive downhill racing in this state for this specific competition that happens every year. What's it take to do that? Now, only at this point am I at a specific level. Now, you can have increasing levels of specificity, meaning that you niche down more and more and more and more and more over time to get extremely, extremely, extremely targeted on exactly what you need to learn. You can do that. But at the top, you have general knowledge. At the bottom, you have specific. So general in your field, I don't know what you do. Maybe you are a plumber currently. Maybe you're in marketing. Maybe you're in high-ticket sales. Maybe you're selling, roofs or cars or things like that. Maybe you're selling high-ticket coaching programs that are $30,000. Maybe you're selling masterminds, whatever that is. You start off with general, and then you get into really, really, really specific, and that's where usually the money is. The more specific you are, that's usually where the money is. It used to be jack of all trades, master of none. Well, now you need to be master of one to make money. You can be jack of all trades, but you better be master of one if you're going to make money, generally speaking. So I want to talk about how you actually get into specific learning, because it's extremely important that you understand that you can't just stick with general knowledge all the time. There are a ton of people that know a lot about a little. There's a ton of them. And you see these people on game shows and they smoke all the answers and you're like, man, that's amazing. This guy must be rich. And you find out that he works at a dead-end job and he's doing nothing in his life to really move him forward to be successful in any way, shape, or form that you would truly define success as. Doesn't have time, doesn't have money, doesn't have great relationships, isn't happy, doesn't have amazing health. And you're like, man, but he knows so much. Again, general knowledge. So I want you to think of going from being the game show winner to being the best of the best in whatever you want to do. So I want to take a quick, turn here, go down a different trail, and I want to talk about when you get into learning, there's various different ways of learning. You might be a person who learns, hands-on. You might be a person that learns through listening. You might be a person that learns through watching. So there's 3 different kinds of learning. There's kinesthetic, meaning physical, hands-on. I have to actually be doing it. There is visual. This is the person that they can listen to a lecture all day long, but if there were no written words with it, there's no slides, there's no examples with their teachers writing on the board or going through a PowerPoint, they're not really able to retain much, which the majority of the school system is auditory. Okay, the majority of the school system is not visual, it's not kinesthetic, it is people talking, lecturing, reading out loud. So again, this is why the school system only really appeals to a small type of people that learn auditory, generally speaking, do great in school. People that do not learn auditory, who are specifically visual learners, that might not have a visual teacher, or it might not be a subject that really uses many visuals at all. There's no kinesthetic learning to be had. There's nothing that they can actually do to learn hands-on while they're going through the class. People don't do well in class, and they're like, oh, well, you must not be as smart as so-and-so because he did better. He might just have a different learning style. So keep that in mind. If there were specific subjects that you really didn't do that well on, it might not have been the subject. It might not have been you. It might have actually been the way that the professor or instructor, the teacher, taught the class. Not to place blame on them, but you might not actually have an issue with that area of learning or that area of general knowledge. You might have just not had the teacher that actually fit your learning style. So totally different subject, but I want to talk about reading versus audio content because you can learn from both, and you should. I believe that you should listen to things. You should listen to podcasts on specific topics, or, I have kind of some pre-vetted audio content that comes down every single month that I plug into, that I pay for every month to learn how to do exactly what I do better. Comes from the top 1% of the people that are in the industry that I'm working on building passive income in, and I'm able to learn specifically exactly what's working right now from people. That's auditory learning. And then I also go into reading, which is a little more visual, depending on the books that you're reading, but obviously reading is done with my eyes, done with my vision, but you can't check out reading. And here's what I mean. See, a lot of people, I listen to audiobooks, and I hear this from people all the time, and it kills me because they're like, oh, well, I'll listen to the audiobook of it, or yeah, I did it on audio. You don't learn as much listening to an audiobook as you do reading the book and listening, or just reading the book. And here's why. I can listen to an audiobook and I can fool myself thinking that I'm listening. You can be listening to this podcast right now, totally check out, eyes glaze over for 5 or 10 minutes, and then you check back in and you're like, yeah, I listened to the episode. Oh yeah, I've heard that one. I've talked to people that are like, oh yeah, I read that book. And I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, I did the audio version. How many times have you checked out listening to something and you tune back in and you're like, oh man, I don't even have a clue where I checked out. Do I do audiobooks? Absolutely. But I do that as it's kind of like salt. You put it on some foods, but it's not something that you grab like all the time. I'm constantly in physical books. I'm usually in anywhere between 3 to 5 different books at a time. And I do that because when I lose the attention span for one author, imagine if my voice was the only voice you ever got to hear for the rest of your life. First of all, if that was the case, I would be extremely sorry that you had to listen to me for the rest of your life only. Like, you should be able to have conversations and listen to other people, because other voices, it's easier to stay focused when the voice changes every once in a while. So I have a bunch of different books going, but they're always targeted at specific areas. And when I say that you can't check out reading, here's what I mean. If I'm reading a book and I start the first paragraph off in the book, and then I notice by the time I get to the bottom, I've spaced out, guess what? I read that page again. And if I do it again, guess what happens? I read it again. How often do people listen to an audiobook, they check out and they're like, you know what? I'm going to go back to make sure that I've listened to past what I've already listened to. I'm going to go back and listen to that again to make sure that I get everything. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take notes. And if I feel like it's too deep, then I'm going to pause the book because the content is so important to me. I'm looking for specific knowledge right now so much. I'm so hungry to learn in this specific area that I'm willing to pause this book, go home, sit at home and stare at the wall and take notes while I'm listening to this, pause it again, kind of turn my head, man, I'm really listening to this, auditory learning. I really need to make sure I retain all of this. You usually don't do that. You're usually driving down the road, you're going on a run, you're at the gym, you're catching a nugget here or there, and you're like, well, as long as I'm getting something, yeah, you might be grasping maybe 40% of that book, but if you're sitting down and you're listening to it over and over and over again, you're taking notes, you're really focused, you're on a walk, and you're like, man, I'm going to listen to that chapter again. It's the third time, man, I've been on this chapter third time this week. I listened to it Monday, listened to it Tuesday, listened to it again Tuesday night, listened to it Wednesday morning, fourth time now. Now I'm really beginning to retain that information. And guess what? If I want to also go through the book, I'll listen to the audio book in the morning in that chapter. I'll read that chapter in the evening. And then maybe the next day I'll listen to it while I read it at the same time. I'm taking notes. I'm highlighting things. I'm writing things in the margin because I am not learning general knowledge. I'm not looking for how do I balance the bike? How do I pedal? How do I steer? How do I stop? I'm looking for specific. How do I become in the top 5% of this competition of downhill mountain bike racing in this state during this exact season? Like, how do I, that's specific knowledge. So I highly recommend that you read. Listening to things is great. Well, Jesse, I don't have the time for reading. That's garbage. You and I both know that's garbage. I don't care if you work 16 hours a day. If you have time to hop on YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, if you watch TV, if you got a series on Netflix that you follow, if you're watching movies every night, if you've got time to go out to eat, if you got time to hang out with your friends, you have time to read. You're just using it for something else. It's like when I talk to someone, they're like, man, I don't have $50 or $100. Like, I don't have the money every month to invest into the software that I need to grow my business. And I'm like, let me get this straight. So you don't have $100 a month, so you make nothing. And they're like, well, no, I have it. And then I see that same person posting on Facebook about how they went out to this expensive dinner with their wife, or about how they bought these new shoes for their wife, or how they just bought this new car. And they're like, yeah, but I didn't have the $50 or $100 or $200 that it took to run this specific software. Like, I didn't have it, man. I can't buy that book. Like, I don't have $20, man. That's expensive, $20. And you're like, you have the money. It's just going other places. So you have the focus, you have the attention, you have the energy, you have the time. It's just being given to other things that I'm probably 99% safe to say this. If you quote unquote don't have the time to read or acquire specific knowledge in a certain area, meaning I'm going through courses, I'm listening to interviews, I'm reading a book, I'm listening to an audiobook, sitting there taking notes, I'm mentoring with someone. If you don't have the time for that right now, it's because that time is being given away to something else. So going back to specific to general knowledge, I would highly encourage that you read. See, one of the things that I did for years is read all kinds of different books. I have hundreds of books on my shelves. Some of them I read once. Some of them I've read 2, 3, 4, 5. I have a few books that I've read, I think, upwards of 5 or 6 times, the exact same book, and I use a different highlighter color or different pen color, or I'll use a pencil this time and a pen next time, or a black pen this time, a blue one the next time, a green one the next time, a red one the next time. And I'm going through every single time, and I can see the first time I read it, here's the highlighter that I used. The second time, well, Jesse, that sounds super anal. Yes, it is. Absolutely. I want to know, what did I learn from the first time to the third time, the third time to the sixth to all the way to the 10th time I've read it? What did I learn each time that was a little bit different? And when I put a note in the book, sometimes I'll put a date next to it because I want to know that I learned this at this time. So next time I read that, okay, I already know that. So what can I find deeper in this chapter? I'm looking for specific knowledge. You should be studying to get better at specific areas of weakness. See, there's this idea of beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And when I first began working out, I was just working out to work out. I was literally just learning to lift weights. There are proper ways and there are improper ways to lift weights. There's a right way and a wrong way to do a bench press, a squat, a deadlift, a bent over barbell row, a pull-up, all this stuff. Lunges. There's a right and wrong way to run. There's a proper gait that you should have to not damage your knees and ankles and hips and back. Like, there's all this different stuff. So I had to learn to work out first. I'm a beginner. I make a lot of gains or progress as a beginner because I'm totally untrained. General knowledge. I'm learning how to ride a bike. I'm learning how to lift weights. I'm learning how to get into a specific industry or field. And you can make a ton of progress just by getting into it and just starting. Anything is better than nothing. So I begin to make progress. When I get to an intermediate level, it means that what I did as a beginner will no longer satisfy to make progress as an intermediate person. And then when you get to advanced, this is kind of, if you want to look at this as a regular pyramid, beginner, anything is better than nothing. Just me going into the gym and lifting weights, picking up weights, I'm probably going to grow muscles, get stronger, look a little bit better, lose some body fat, gain some muscle, feel better, my confidence goes up, and I can lift more weight. Awesome. Wonderful. Great job. I'm at the beginner level. The middle section of the pyramid is the intermediate. Most people get stuck here, or they never move on from beginner to intermediate because there are different techniques. Now, as an intermediate lifter, I have to get into specific programming, and I'm using the analogy of weightlifting because I think we can all relate with exercise. Maybe some of us can't relate with exercise because we don't do any, but we can all relate with the fact that exercise has different phases. There's the guy that goes into the gym, looks like he's never lifted weights in his life. Maybe he's never lifted weights, or maybe he's doing what he did as a beginner 3 years ago, and it's 3 years after he started, and he's not making progress because he's doing beginner things still. The intermediate person, man, they look like they work out. They look pretty good. The advanced person is the guy that's like, 5% body fat. He's absolutely shredded. He's huge. He's vascular, looks amazing year round. And then there's the elite strength athlete, the advanced guy in strength, and he's, deadlifting maybe 4 times his body weight, 3.5 times his body weight. The dude weighs 180 and he's squatting like 600 pounds and his bench is at 400. Like, that is an advanced lifter. And in your mind, you already know there's something different that guy's doing between the beginner, the intermediate, and the advanced. There's all different phases and stages, and I can readily see that by looking at them. So what do I need to learn to go from beginner to intermediate to advanced? Usually the closer that you get to advanced, the more you've got to be careful exactly what you do. The intermediate guy, he can do a little bit too much and he's fine. The advanced guy can only do a little bit because he can't recover from everything. He can't just go in and be like, you know what? I'm going to do legs today. I'll do, 10 sets of 3 on squats, and then I'll do leg extensions, and then I'll do some hamstring curls. Then I'm going to work calves, and then I'm going to go run, and then I'll do some Stairmaster, and then maybe I'll hit some lunges afterwards. And you know what? Actually, I'm going to do this again in 2 days. Like, he won't recover because it's too much on his body. So when you're learning, you've got to make sure that you're learning in specific areas. So here's kind of where I'm at right now. I read for years and years and years just to read. I think it's been almost 6 days. I haven't missed a day of reading. I've read at least 10 pages a day, most days more than that. That's not a ton, but if you read 15 to 20 minutes a day, you read about 1 million words a year. I'm not a fast reader, but if I'm reading 10 pages every single day, and it's been 6 years, that means I've read over, 3,600 pages, which that's a lot of books. If the average book is roughly 180 to 230 pages, somewhere in there, that's a lot of books that I've had the chance to read. I've learned a lot of stuff. A lot of things that I've learned have helped me, but now I'm getting into higher levels of specificity. I'm looking for what is the bottleneck that I'm at right now? Where am I stuck? What's the thing that I need to learn so I can move on? And where I'm currently learning right now is leadership books and coaching books, because I've realized that the number one asset in what I do, the number one asset, see, some people's asset is, capital because they're investors. And when I say investor, I mean they can lose a lot of money and still be okay. Not the guy who's playing the stock market and can't afford to lose. If he lost $1,000, he's like, man, I don't even know what I'm going to do. I'm not even going to be able to pay my car note this month. Like, that's someone who's dabbling, but they're not really a qualified investor. Per Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Cash Flow Quadrant, qualified investor needs to be able to lose at least $250,000 on any given day and it not change his lunch plans. So can you start investing before that? Yes, but usually really to play the game at a high level, you need to have a lot of money to enter. So people are my greatest asset. If you're a business person, cash flow, cash on hand, cash is the lifeblood of business. Your greatest asset is number one, you, but also being able to actually put money into the cash cow to keep it producing milk or revenue, so to speak. If I was someone in sports, my greatest asset, if I own the team, would be the players. If I was someone in real estate, my greatest assets would be the real estate holdings that I have. If I'm someone who collects cars, you actually can purchase collectors' cars as investments. There's people that do that. Probably not for a living, but there's people that make a lot of money. And yes, there are some people that do just that for a living. My asset is, number one, my knowledge of what vehicles are worth what, but number two, the vehicles themselves. So my greatest asset is people. So I'm reading a book right now, and it's The Ultimate Guide to Developing Leaders. It's by John Maxwell. It just came out this past October. Really good book so far. Would highly recommend it if you are anyone in business, because you will ultimately have to develop leaders if you want to grow your organization. If you don't grow your organization by developing leaders, by investing into people, guess what? You get to keep doing everything yourself forever, which is no bueno. That's no fun. So people are my greatest asset in the business that I'm in. And I'm learning that taking time, I told you guys I'll give you kind of personal updates here and there on the show, but this really goes hand in hand with the specific information, specific knowledge. Taking time to develop people, believing in them, looking for them, believing that they have potential to be fulfilled, and searching for their ability to develop what they have is totally worth the investment. I'm learning that right now because I've worked with so many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different people for so long, and sometimes I just assume, well, they might not have XYZ and they might not be the type of person. Well, John Maxwell says, before you can develop the leader, you have to develop the person. So before I can develop them specifically as a leader, I have to learn to develop them as a person. That comes with, number one, having success in the area myself, so I can tell them how to navigate the minefield that I've already walked through and made it to the other side. See, if you're going through a minefield, it would be great to know a guy that went through the other side of it and has all of his limbs, and he's still alive. I don't want to learn from the guy that's got a theory. So I've got to, number one, produce credibility in the area that I'm in, having success, having shown that I can produce that success in others, and then also, ultimately, becoming a mentor who mentors people that mentor others, which would be called a level 4 leader or a level 5 leader. I'll get into that whole nother topic. There's about 2 or 3 specific books that I can dive into that with on a future episode if you're looking for more leadership. But I have to understand that people are my greatest asset. I've got to be willing to take that time. Sometimes people walk away. Sometimes you invest into things, you invest into people, you put time in, and it doesn't work out because they go different directions, or they end up in traditional business, which thankfully I'm not in, but traditional business, they end up becoming your competition. But I've got to learn to invest more into people, understanding that I'm going to serve them with nothing in return, possibly ever. I'm just going to serve them for the sake of serving them. I'm just going to meet them where they're at and do whatever I can to help them move forward with where they're at. And that's my bottleneck right now, is learning this process at a deeper level. Learning in very, very, very specific areas to make myself move forward, eliminate the bottleneck and the weakness that are holding me back. That's where I'm at. So I have put down a lot of books, the recreational reading, so to speak. My wife and I are pregnant right now. She's at about 21 weeks. And we will be due in mid to late April. And, some things have gone backwards. There's times in your journey that things will go backwards, and you have to learn from those seasons. Okay, what is it here that I need to learn in order to move forward? Like, if you ever lost in a video game, you made a wrong choice, and I'm not an advocate for playing video games by any means, but I used to play them a long time ago. I play them about, I used to say 2 hours a year. It's probably about 3 hours every 2 years now. I barely ever play them. It's not an investment of my time. I know it's spent. I'm never going to get it back. If you are a full-time professional video gamer in Japan, absolutely. Go learn that skill. Anyone else, I understand if it's a hobby, but it's largely a waste of your time because you're not going to ever get an investment. There's no ROI. There's no return on investment with that time. I am pouring it down the drain. I'll never get anything back for it. You can say it's relieving stress or decompressing you, or I think it's fun, and that's all fine and dandy. But if you want to move forward, I would encourage you to cut that out of your life. Not all the way, but about 90%. But right now I'm looking at how can I get better at this skill set? And when you're in video games, there are times that you die and you go back a level. And, my wife and I have experienced a season where it feels like, man, we just majorly stepped back a level. We had all this progress but I've got to take a step back. I've got to zoom out and I've got to say, okay, what's the specific knowledge that I need to learn to get out of the season? But also, what is the specific lesson? Because the lesson continues until the lesson is learned. It'll keep happening over and over and over again. What's the specific knowledge that I need right now to move out of this season and to move forward in life to make sure I don't have to repeat this season again? Because I want to go through a season once. I want to learn and soak up everything I can from it. And then I want to move forward. Going through the season without learning the lesson means that I'm bound to repeat. See, those that don't learn from history are bound to repeat it. If I go through this season, I'm like, man, this sucks. I feel like we went backwards. Like, this is horrible. And then I don't learn anything from it. And I'm just bitter. And I'm like resentful. Like, oh, I can't believe we had to go through that. It was terrible. Why me? Like, I'm a victim and this and that. Guess what? That season's going to happen again. And then I'm going to have to go through it again because the lesson continues until the lesson is learned. And this is what I want to end with. You've got to know what you need to work on for your bottleneck. I would sit down. I would look at your business. I would look at your career. I would look at your relationships, whatever area you're looking to improve. Again, for my wife and I, we're looking to build passive income. This show is season 1, The Journey to Freedom. I'm looking to get totally financially free. So I have to learn, what is it that I need right now to move forward? What can I do to put the least amount of time in here to move forward the most? And then I'm just going to absolutely hammer away at that thing until that weakness becomes a strength. So I've shored up my weaknesses while continuing to grow my strengths, and then I move on to the next thing. And I'll give one more analogy, and that is this. When I'm in the gym, if I'm working on bench press, back when I used to do personal training and CrossFit coaching or whatever, if I'm working on bench press, the idea of, man, I'm stuck on the bench, a lot of beginner and intermediate lifters will think like, I'm just going to do more bench. Like, that's great, and it might help. It might. I'm not saying it won't. But at some point, doing more of the same is not going to get you over the hump. Like, just like weight loss coaching. When I was coaching people and they're like, I'm at 1,200 calories and should I cut down to 11? I'm like, well, we've already cut calories like 3 or 4 times and you're still stuck. So we need to either change what you're eating, increase your exercise, improve your sleep, or change your supplementation. Like, it's not the fact that you need to eat less food, because there are efficiencies that develop in your body of saying, okay, Cheryl's metabolism is right here. If she starts eating less, I'm just going to adjust my calorie intake, my expenditure, everything else. I'll slow some things down so we can survive at that, because we can't keep eating ourselves at this rate because we'll die. Like, your body adapts. So at some point, doing more of the same is really of no use. It's great to brush up on, but doing more bench press just for the sake of more bench press is not going to move me forward. I have to figure out, what is my sticking point? Is it difficult right off the chest? Is it difficult midway through? Am I having a hard time locking the weights out? And then what muscles do I need to work on? And then I do a test and retest. So with your learning, do a test and retest. I'm going to study this and apply what I'm learning. That's the number one thing to avoid information constipation, is to apply what you learn. Don't let your learning lead to knowledge. Let your learning lead to action. Again, quote that I started off with by Jim Rohn. So I've got to get to a place where what I'm learning is strictly to benefit me in a certain direction. And then I'm applying what I'm learning. I'm testing. How did that go? Again, plan, do, check, and adjust. Talked about that on a different episode. I'm making a plan. I am doing the plan. I'm adjusting. How did it work? And then I'm moving forward. Plan. I do it. I check it. Did it work? And then I'm adjusting as needed and doing it again. So I'm diving into this area. I'm deep diving. I'm listening to things, watching things, reading things, coaching with people that have results in this area. I'm going to see if it makes the difference that I need. And then if it doesn't, I'm going to keep doing it. As soon as it no longer makes a difference, I'm going to zoom back out, pick up my focus, take it to the next bottleneck, the next weakness, the next area of specificity that I need to dive into, that I need to go headfirst, 100% immersion. I'll dive into that. I'll learn everything I can. Then I'll zoom out and say, okay, what am I stuck on now? I'll pick up, I'll go to another area. I'll focus on that until it's no longer a weakness. And I'll do that over and over and over and over again. If you want to avoid information constipation, number 1, stop being general and learn specificity. Number 2, actually begin to apply what you're learning. And then number 3, learn to make a plan, do the plan, check the plan, and adjust the plan as needed, and go from bottleneck to bottleneck, weakness to weakness, making those weaknesses strength over and over and over again. Instead of doing more of the same, instead of learning more about everything else, learn about one area, focus on it, apply what you're learning, make the progress, and then go to the next area, repeat the process. Guys, I hope this helped. I'll talk to you in episode 50.